Welcome back, everyone. I'm Bobby Ann, your community manager and host, joined by Paige Fitzgerald today. We are excited to have her on because she is the co founder of a paddling specific product that you may have seen on the water, Floatsup. Paige, thank you so much for being here to share your story with us.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so first things first, what is Floatsup?
So, Floatsup is obviously a paddling accessories brand. It was founded around our product, the Floatsup Cup, which was our idea for keeping beverages secure on your paddleboard and kayak, or really whatever watercraft you may be floating on. We were obviously out on the water on our paddleboards, and we found that our beverages were tipping over. And so the Floatsup Cup solves all those problems and keeps your beverages secure. So Floatsup that's our founding product. And then we've got some other ideas in the works.
Ooh, I'm excited to hear about that. And,
Yeah.
that's something that I love about products like this is a lot of times the simplest solution is just the best solution. It's not a crazy complicated design to try to use. It's a flexible material that's like one size fits most, and it's just as simple as that. Now, I'm sure that's a simplified version of how the crazy journey that it was to bring this to life. So let's start at the beginning. What did that look like? How did you get this thing started? What was the idea, and what were your first steps in it?
Yeah. So, I mean, really going way back to the beginning. So my co-founder and husband, Eric, we were looking for something to do back in 2020 during those COVID times when we wanted outdoor activities. And like I said, we were out on the water, we were on our paddle boards, and we were having the problem of our beverages tipping over. And we searched the marketplace and didn't love any of the options. And so, we thought there had to be a better way. And so we, started playing around with different ideas. And we thought, why shouldn't we just put it under the bungee cord? There's bungee cords on all these paddle boards and kayaks, and that seemed like a really simple solution. And so we started carving things and using a friend of a friend's 3D printer, and kind of came up with a rough model, and then started kind of going down that path. And that led to some other iterations. And the idea kind of evolved from there to the point where we thought we should try and turn this into a real product, something beyond just an idea, and turn that idea into something real, and maybe something that we could sell, which was maybe initially, I don't want to say naive, but you hit so many challenges along the way as you're developing things and learning things, and figuring it out. And so we developed the brand and developed kind of the final product idea, and kind of brought this product to life. We beyond like the shape, we knew we wanted it to float, and so there's material considerations and branding considerations of how we wanted it to look, and kind of figuring out how to launch it and pay for it, and all of those things. So that was kind of how we kind of got to that launch point, I guess.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
during the test and phase, how many different versions of it did you end up with before you got to what is now Floatsup?
Oh gosh. I mean, so the very first, like, we have this idea, we were like we were carving it out of like the flour foam you buy at the craft store.
Oh, like that
Like
green
trying to figure out,
crumbly.
yeah, and like trying to figure out like where the channel should go. And then we were drawing up pictures like on a rough computer, because we like didn't have the 3D program or CAD. So then we were like, okay, we need to get this 3D printed. How do we do that? And so there was quite a few, I don't even know, there was quite a few versions during that rough initial period along the way, till we got to the stage where we felt like we had the idea solidified. And that's when we filed for a patent. on our idea, which was, securing the cup to the board or to the watercraft with the channel and the bungee. And so we do have a utility patent and a design patent um, for that utility of securing a cup holder to a watercraft with a bungee. So,
Oh, well, that's great to
yeah,
know. So, what did
yeah.
that process look like? How did you jump into that? How did you guys decide that you did think you needed a patent for this?
Yeah, well, we knew that, obviously with a simple product like ours, it would be easy to copy. We knew that, in our world, in our marketplace, obviously there's a lot going on in the world right now. That stuff's in the news, but we know that products are easy to copy, especially by, a lot of foreign countries, which, we can talk about. We've had some issues with that. So thank goodness we do have patents and intellectual property around what we do have. Not that that stops bad actors from copying our product, but we did know that, an idea like ours would be easy to copy. And so having a patent might protect us from that. And so we were like, we'll file for a patent. But it takes years, especially with a utility patent, to get that. And so, from initial filing to, when we actually launched, we launched without having secured that patent yet, but we were able to launch under a patent pending.
So, how long were you guys launched before that patent came through?
So we launched, well, we did a Kickstarter in 2022, and that was patent pending. We launched product in July of 2023, and then our patent came through in October of 2023. So we ended up getting our patent a few months after launch, which ended up being a really good thing because within a few weeks, a month of launching, unfortunately, fake versions of our product showed up on Amazon and Temu and all of those, common um, common websites. So we've learned a lot about that too along the way.
Yeah, I know that had to be so frustrating. Would you mind talking more about that? What has been the process? I mean, I would imagine that is what a patent is supposed to help weed out, or at least make it more difficult for people to accomplish dupes and be able to mass produce a knockoff, essentially. So, what are some of the things that you're dealing with that?
Sure. So we have learned a lot about that whole world. It's not the thing that you really expect when you have an idea for a product or launch a company, especially, I mean, it's my husband and I, it's two of us, running this company. We're a small company. We have a, fairly small market share, I guess, as you would say. So you don't always think that something like that will happen to you. You kind of think of that as being, I don't know, other people's problems, I guess. Not like the paddleboard drink holder. I mean, even if it is popular, you just don't always think that that sort of thing will happen to you. So when it did, we were pretty caught off guard, especially within like a month of launching. Um,
Mm, that's
so
quick.
yeah, we did have a video go viral, and so there was some, which is awesome, but also it brought some awareness to our product. And so, unfortunately, that made us a target for that. They saw an opportunity, right? And so we've learned a lot about this world. So yes, the patents are a good thing. Um, but patent law is difficult to enforce when people are overseas. There are some ways to enforce it through our marketplaces in the US, but it's actually easier to enforce copyright and trademark law than it is patent law. So for the people that were selling or claiming to sell a similar product to ours, it wasn't always our product, but they were using our photos, and so
Oh, like with your branded name
or
and everything on it?
they would remove our name, so they would Photoshop out Floatsup
Mm.
out of the cup, and then they would sell like a very inferior version of our cup. Like it didn't float, it was smaller, it was flimsier, or it was rigid. It was a bad version of it. Um, and but they would use our photos to sell it. And so yeah. And sometimes they would leave in the Floatsup in the photos, and sometimes they wouldn't. And so it was actually easier to pursue them on copyright and trademark law than necessarily the patent law, which is just an interesting piece of that fun fact.
Yeah, it
And
sounds like a
so,
lot to navigate.
yeah, so we were able to find attorneys that specialize in that and launch some lawsuits against hundreds of sellers on all of the common large, um, selling platforms that everybody is familiar with.
Have you
Um,
seen that die down at all, or is that something that you are just unfortunately is a constant battle?
it'll be interesting to see this summer. Generally, so that was now we've been through 2 summers of this. So during the summer, it kind of ramps up, right? Because that's when they see the most sales. This summer will be really interesting just with what's going on in the world right now. So they may not see as much opportunity there as they did previously if it costs more for them to ship here or, all of that. Because these are, 99%, 100% coming from, China. And, that's where.
Yeah, where all of the most of the mass-produced items that you see on Temu, Shein, a lot of off-brand things on Amazon. I mean, I think it's pretty well
Yeah.
known that that's where it's coming from,
Yeah.
because that's where the majority of the factories produce cheaper
Yeah.
materials like that. So,
Yeah.
well, I hope that is on a positive note. Hope that that
Yeah.
is dying down for you guys, and this will
Yeah.
be a much more successful season. Now, I something that I do feel like I have pretty consistently heard from a lot of people who produce products is while they were developing the idea is that the idea is crazy, or if the idea is not crazy, it's a great idea, but it seems like it will be way too hard to even attempt. Did you hear a lot of that while you guys were starting to talk about your ideas with your
Um,
friends and family, and or what
You
was the
know,
response?
I think people are like encouraging of it. Um, I think when people have ideas, they're like, oh my gosh, totally, you should do it. But I think now that we've done it, the number of people that say, oh my gosh, you actually did it. Like they're like, the people talk about doing this, but a lot of people talk about it and they don't actually do it. And you guys did this. So I think that, even if they were encouraging along the way, I think maybe behind maybe they weren't telling us like, are they actually going to do this?
Yeah.
So I think that like the people around us were all like, oh, this is a great idea. But
Yeah.
I think, telling people it's a great idea, but then like wondering if like you'll actually execute on it, like will you actually like put your money into this and actually follow through? But I think that we had a lot of supportive people around us who were like, oh my gosh, this is actually like a great idea. But I think to be, I think people have been, you know, pleasantly surprised that we really have followed through on it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear. So, what
Yeah.
did life look like for you whenever you were starting this idea? Did you just like drop everything you were doing and focus fully on this, or did you have other things happening at the same time while you were trying to develop it?
Yeah. So we both have had full-time jobs when we started the idea and up until recently. We were so long story, but when Eric and I met, we were living in 2 different states, and then COVID happened and we were still going back and forth. And then we had this crazy idea and moved to a couple different states, started a company, got married, had 2 full-time jobs. So I guess it's been a whirlwind few years in all of that. But we've just kind of made it work. I guess everybody kind of dreams of the side hustle. So we've just kind of, it's been evenings and weekends for a long time, and luckily paddleboarding on the weekends is, not a bad gig, but maybe unloading thousands of boxes, or shipping shipping hundreds of boxes on a Tuesday night isn't always your dream, but it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, it is that hard, busy stuff that happens behind the scenes that make the
yeah,
magic happen. So,
yeah,
you take the good with the bad, or the tiring with the, good,
yeah,
or however you want to frame it. But I'm curious, what was it about this idea of creating a cup holder that drove you to put all of that time and all of that energy into making this thing a reality with two full-time jobs?
yeah. I think, I guess on the hard days, maybe we ask ourselves the same question, but um, no, I think it's been really fun. I mean, it's cool to build something like that, but I think you always have that dream, like, what if this is the thing? Like, what if this means we can quit our jobs and, live that life where, we decide what we're doing on a Wednesday, and, retire early, or, have that flexible schedule, or, spend 3 months a year in Costa Rica, or, like, what if this is the
Yeah.
thing that, creates that kind of flexible life, for that, that thing,
Mhm.
that isn't that 9 to 5 job every day. So I think that that's probably what keeps us going, is that, that what if this is the idea, that kind of changes that,
Yeah. Well,
that
it's been a short
vision.
amount of time, but it seems like it's paying off so far.
Yeah, we'll see.
Getting a little closer to the goal every day.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, it would, there's still some day jobs, and,
Yeah.
happening, and, you know, we'll see how things evolve. Every year it's like this time of year, while getting through winter, and this time of year, it's always like a little slower. So,
Hmm.
we always are like, please, you know, please be a busy summer.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, we can relate to that. Being a very seasonal business,
yeah,
paddle season is short for the at least for North America. Luckily, we are a international community, but
yeah,
yeah, it's kind of like during the holiday season, and January, February, we're like, "Are you guys still out there? Like, are you coming back? We hope you're coming back during paddle season."
yeah,
And then it's just
right,
like
right,
everybody starts showing up out of nowhere. So, um,
exactly.
yeah, so I have full faith that this is going to be a great season for you guys. Up until this point, though, two-part question. What has been the hardest part of the journey, and what's been the biggest payoff so far?
I would say the hardest was probably when we started seeing those fake
Mm,
ones pop up online with our photos.
yeah.
Um, you know, we had like the biggest high when we had that first video go viral, and we sold out within a week, and we were just like on this high, and then 2 weeks later we saw all those fake listings, and with our own photos on
Hmm.
them. And so, like, that was probably one of the lows, was just like, can we get through that? Can we overcome like that level of just onslaught of, the cheaper version.
Hmm.
And then one of the, I guess, a recent high was that we got into Shields, the sporting goods store Shields. And
That's
so,
awesome.
yeah, and so we got into almost all of their stores. So seeing, our product on, such a big, legit sporting goods store shelf, like, makes it not just like us and, people online, who wants them, but like people like who are buying so many other great products, have it on their shelves too. So I'd say that's a recent win.
I'd say that's a big win. I
Yeah,
mean, it sounds like, that's kind of what you're working for the whole time, right? Is to
yeah,
be in that, to be seen in that category and be alongside some of the other really awesome brands that we're using on the water. So big congrats on that. Glad to
yeah.
hear that for you guys. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So, as we're talking about getting into these bigger stores, I guess let's jump ahead to from the beginning. How did you begin to get this out in the world? Where were the first places you were seeing it, and how'd you get it out there?
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, obviously online, you're just social media and, emailing people's, phone numbers, calling, just any way you can, walking into our local stores, that we think would carry them. Whenever we're on vacation, we stop in at every paddleboard and sporting goods store, and ask to talk to their buyer, manager, or call ahead. So there's just a lot of that. Last year, we went to the outdoor retailer trade show. So that was an opportunity to get in front of retailers and talk directly with buyers. But like the Shields opportunity, we just called them and asked to talk to their paddle sports buyer, and then bugged them a lot till they finally gave us a chance.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of that for those opportunities.
Yeah.
So
Well, it sounds like all the elbow grease is paid off. A
yeah, well, just
lot
gotta
of
keep
dedication
going.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, as a paddling specific product, this is something that was created to be on the water. It was created to be part of the paddling community that kind of naturally has you involved in the paddling community all the time. Is there something about this community that inspires you to just keep moving forward through all those difficult moments?
Well, I mean, we just love to be on the water. I mean,
Yeah.
even before Floatsup existed, I mean, we both loved the water. We loved, Eric loved kayaking before we ever got paddle boards. I loved a good float down a river, whether it was, a paddleboard, an inner tube, a raft, whatever it was. I think there's just something really great, whether you're on a river or a lake and everybody's out there, floating, paddling, and everyone's having a great time. And, it's just nice to be out, enjoying nature, but it's also a very social, fun thing to do with friends, which I just think is a nice combination, that you can kind of have that community, that social, that nature aspect, the fitness aspect, if you're actually paddling somewhere, versus just hanging out on your board. But, whatever it is that you're doing, I mean, Floats Up, our tagline is kind of paddle your way. So, whether you're hanging out, paddling, sitting, floating, whatever it is, that's just, it's a nice part to be a part of the community like that.
Yeah. Well, and your product really just fits right into that so perfectly because this really is designed to encourage like social paddling, I feel like, because that's one of the things that you kind of think about when you're out on the water with your friends is like having a nice beverage and just taking things slow and hanging out. And I think that fits into those values very perfectly. With everything you had mentioned at the beginning that you have some other things on the horizon, is there anything that you might be able to give us a little heads up about?
Well, so like I said, we're working on some new products. We are currently trying to figure out when we might launch those. There's some stuff going on in the world right now that we're trying
Yeah.
to figure out when we might get those here. But we're looking at some different sizes.
Okay,
So,
cool.
you know, maybe for some, I don't want to like ruin the future launches, but we all have different, sizes of water bottles. We have different sizes of cans. So there's some stuff on the horizon that way, other little accessories. And then next year we hope to kind of expand maybe into some other categories too. So all around like the paddling and hanging out on the
Yeah.
water.
So, are
Yeah.
you guys looking at staying in the like accessory category, or are you looking to expand in different types of products?
Right now we're just concentrating on accessories. I think we feel that there's kind of a missing, I don't know, there's room for improvement, we think, on the accessories front. Like there's a lot of great boards out there, but there's some room, I think, on the accessories for some higher quality accessories. So we just want to kind of provide those and provide what we would want. So, if we feel like there's stuff that's missing that we want out there, we want to provide those things. So
Yeah. Well, you guys are very versed in doing research and finding very interesting materials. And so I have no doubt that you're going to bring some more interesting things to the market and some more things that the Girl Paddlers community can obsess over, just like we've obsessed over our float cups. I'm looking forward to start seeing some teasers about that. Can't wait. I'm
yeah,
hoping the season will blossom the way that you have it planned. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that when it comes about. So good luck with
yeah.
all of that. So, something you actually had mentioned earlier that I would like to bring back up is people had kind of made multiple comments to you guys like, wow, you actually did it. They might have been thinking it before, but they didn't say it out loud until you actually accomplished it. So for girl paddlers who are listening to this that might have some kind of paddling product idea on their minds, but they're not sure if they should try to bring it into the world, do you have any tips for someone who might be trying to bring their own idea to life? Because I think we've all had those moments in life where we're like, oh, I have this really cool idea. And then that's all it ever is. It's an idea, right? And then later down the road, we're like, oh, somebody actually like did it. So do you have any tips for people who might be having those crazy ideas?
Well, one, there is no right way to do it. There's no roadmap. Everybody's just figuring it out as they go along. We've talked to some other inventors and other, kind of new businesses out there, and everybody has just said, we just have figured it out. We just Googled everything. You just, I guess Chat GPT didn't even exist when we started this 4 years ago, but now it's really helpful. Everybody just figures it out. Like there's really no roadmap for it. So don't feel like I have to know how to do this. Like you really just should start. Just start figuring it out. I talked to somebody the other day. They actually reached out on our Instagram and said, hey, I have this product that I just launched. I saw that you got into Shields because we had announced that. I had talked to them the other day. Do you mind if would you mind spending some time talking to me? And I said, no, not at all, because I wish we had had somebody to talk to. And we actually had a great conversation for an hour, and we talked for, about all sorts of things. And, he had been through similar situation about, his patents. And anyways, it was a great conversation. So just reach out to people and figure it out, and don't feel like you have to know everything. Really just go for it, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. I mean, everyone starts from the bottom, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and nobody has it figured out. Even when we talk to other companies at trade shows, like nobody has it figured out. No, like only the big giant companies who've really been doing it for a long time really know what they're doing, but everybody else is just figuring it out as they go along. So,
Yeah. I think that should help
yeah,
everyone's imposter syndrome a little bit. Just knowing it's the truth, It's kind of like when you're a kid and you think that like all adults know the answers to everything, and then you become an adult and you're like, "Oh, nobody knows anything."
yeah. Yeah, and I'm classic. Like I want to have it all figured out. I want to do it perfect. And yeah, Eric always has to remind me like we just have to do it. Like
Mhm.
we just have to do it. So,
You can iron things out along the way.
yeah. Yeah.
We're finding that ourselves. Like me and Sadia, we're a two-person team with some assistants here and there occasionally, but it's mostly just us, like
Yeah.
floating through this community and figuring things out along the way. And I can concur.
Yeah.
You just have
And there's
to
a
you have
lot
to
of
jump in somewhere.
yeah, there's a lot of grace for mistakes. And I
Yeah.
think we, in hindsight, we were trying to be so polished and perfect when we launched, and I think almost there would have been more room for us just putting ourselves out there and saying like, hey, we did this thing and please buy it, rather than trying to, make it all perfect and look all perfect when we launched. And I think people like that authenticity. And, maybe we could have even embraced that more, and probably could still embrace it more on our social media. But it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's scary to put yourself out there and put your idea out there.
Yeah, it is. And you kind of briefly touched on this that I think the paddling community, we've talked to a lot of other founders and we've been, have done collaborations and worked with other products, but I feel like most people are very open to like just answering questions and just helping you if you ask, or just, doing things like this, being willing to carve out some time to have conversations with us or partner on products or whatever it is, it doesn't hurt to reach out. I think this community is very open to that. I think it's a very kind community as far as the paddling space goes and all different, aspects. So I really like that you brought that up as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, funny enough, you had mentioned your tagline is paddle your way, and our show is called Paddle Her Way.
I know
So, a
that.
really great overlap there. And the question that I do like to always close out with is what does paddling Paige's way look like? That can be who you paddle with, what you paddle, where you paddle, anything in between. I would love to hear what that looks like for you.
Well, I'm gonna say I love a good float situation, which I know is like probably the wrong answer, but we
No
I
wrong
love
answers.
I love those rivers where, like, okay, maybe there's a little bit of paddling or you paddle up the current and then you can just relax back down the river. And, you've got all of your friends and you're maybe attached together or near each other, and you've got your cooler and some snacks. And I mean, really, we always joke like, floats up, like I am the float, Eric's the sup, that's the combination. And I do love a good paddle, but I love a good float too. I think that's sometimes the best part of the day is the float part of the day.
That sounds like a dream pair. I'm a big fan of floating myself. Even in my kayak, sometimes
Yeah.
I just like to prop my paddle up and just let the current take me where it's going to take me while I just soak up the sunshine. So, definitely not the wrong answer. I'm a big fan of that myself. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this detailed information with us. I think it's very insightful. A lot of people, may not know what all goes into creating fun things like this behind the scenes, and I think it's been really great to kind of hear the journey of it. And we're big fans of your product over here at Girl
Thank you.
Paddlers. We have some for ourselves. We've given some away to the community just because we love them. Now that hopefully more people know about it after this conversation, where's the best place for Girl Paddlers to grab a Floatsup?
Yeah. Well, floatsup.com, obviously. You can also buy them on other, e-commerce sites, but floatsup.com really is the best place to buy them. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, of course, you can find that in the show notes. And previously, Paige was really, really kind to give Girl Paddlers a discount code. So you can get 10% off with your discount code that will also add in the show notes for you because everyone loves a discount. And of course, it kind of goes hand in hand with Girl Paddlers anyway, because your signature color is very close to one of our signature colors. So I think it's a really fun partnership and very aesthetically pleasing to a lot of the Girl Paddlers community. I'm really excited to see more of these on the water this season. And again, looking forward to seeing what you guys have going on in the future.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.